I mean, I'm sure if this was the only Iron Maiden album you'd ever heard, you'd consider this to be the best Iron Maiden album.
Yeah, but then that's just by default.
Well,
it's also the worst at the same time. It's like Schrodinger's Maiden album.
Hello and welcome to Maiden Voyages, a podcast devoted to exploring the peerless discography of the world's greatest heavy metal band, Iron Maiden. So across this series, we've been journeying through the band's entire discography, discussing, analysing, dissecting, celebrating, and even commiserating, well, more of that later, every single Iron Maiden album. So this episode, we find ourselves in 1990, a new decade.
Dear God.
Ooh. To explore Iron Maiden's Back to Basics 8th album, or should that be Basic 8th album, No Prayer for the Dying.
So you're already throwing shade at this album just from the off.
Well, it's going to come out quite quickly.
Oh, yeah.
So let's do the obligatory introductions. I'm Bledd, an historian of sorts, and an Iron Maiden authority.
Authority?
I am an authority on the work of Iron Maiden.
Okay.
So, you know, if the government have questions about Iron Maiden, they come to me, basically.
Okay. I'm Sam. I'm a writer of sorts, and I'm an Iron Maiden civilian who's on a vox pop on a news report.
Yes. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. What does the average
What
man on the
does the
street
man on the street think about Iron Maiden?
And specifically,
They're pretty good.
What does the average man on the street think about No Prayer for the Dying?
Ugh.
We're about to find out.
Yeah.
So, well, I know the answer to this question, but for the benefit of listeners, Sam, when did you first listen to this album?
I first listened to this album about 2 months ago when we were preparing to do this episode originally. And I mean, I knew a couple of songs off it already. Tail Gunner, Holy Smoke, Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter. Hadn't heard anything else from it. And in some ways, I wish it had stayed that way.
But it's worth noting that this has happened a couple of times before, right? Because you've not heard Killers, you've not heard Somewhere in Time.
Yeah.
But you are also going into uncharted territories, right? Because you've not heard the next, how many albums?
The next 4 albums in full I've not heard, actually.
Wow.
So yeah, this is where things get pretty new for me.
You could say it's a brave new world.
You could say. Doesn't mean you should say that.
I genuinely didn't prepare that. So excuse me if
Sure.
I'm quite pleased with that, actually. So what I do know as a fact is when I was getting into Maiden, so about 2002-3, this was the last album in the discography as it was then that I picked up.
Right.
So I'd have heard this before Matter of Life and Death came out, but it was the last one. Not necessarily through design, you just picked, the CD age.
Yeah.
You've already established we are Generation CDR.
Yeah.
And it was just the last one I came across. Do you want to know, though? For some reason, I vividly remember this. I bought it in London.
Okay.
Because we're on a family trip.
Yeah.
Probably the H&B in Oxford Street, the big one.
It was a Virgin Mega store.
No, there was a H&B in Oxford Street as well. The big boy H&B.
Okay. Know. Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
The flagship one. And I bought another record that day. This isn't because I'll Be Dead yet. That's coming up.
Great.
But did you want to guess what that other record I bought was?
Well, I mean, it could be literally anything. Can you give me a clue?
Could be literally any of the many hundreds of CDs I have.
Exactly.
That currently mostly live in boxes.
I mean, what? It's going to be 13, 14-year-old Blevin, so it's going to be a heavy metal record.
Yeah. I'll give you a band. It's a Kiss album.
Oh, okay. Was it Alive 2?
No.
Was it Lick It Up?
Warmer.
Creatures of the Night?
Colder.
Crazy Nights? Asylum?
Yes!
Jesus. That was painful.
It was, yeah. I don't know why I even brought that up.
Wait, is Crazy Nights even an album?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Crazy Nights is an album.
My Kiss knowledge kind of gets foggy around the mid-80s, where it's all...
As an aside, Asylum is probably... Creatures of the Night is an 80s Kiss album, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
You have Creatures of the Night and then Lick It Up, where they unmask.
Yeah, I would say Asylum then is my second favourite 80s Kiss album.
Okay.
So I really like Creatures of the Night, but Asylum is really
I like
mostly
Lick It Up.
good.
Lick It Up is a good album.
I don't think I've actually listened to that.
If you ignore all the lyrics, it's good. Much like any Kiss album, really.
How do you feel about a quiz, Sam? It is indeed time for Be Quiz or Be Dead.
Yay.
Question 1.
Okay.
And as usual, we pick up where we left off. So we're going into the 7th tour, the 7th tour era, then into No Prayer.
Sure.
So the
And we've
first-
had, I mean, obviously, not to skirt around it, but we just did an episode on Tattooed Millionaire
Yes.
as well. So
So the chronology is completely screwed at this point.
Okay,
So,
fine.
well, the listeners, you can fill it in, right? Just,
Time progressed and albums happened.
Yeah.
The end.
So take it as read. We're in 1988 for the benefit of this first question, at least.
Okay.
So the 7th tour was the first tour where the band utilised a live keyboard player.
Right.
But what was his nickname? I will not accept his actual given name.
Keys Jones.
No, it was the Count,
Oh. Okay.
because he used to dress up in a little robe.
Oh.
So he was kind of on stage, but looked a bit like Ghosted around the
Right.
first album cycle.
Right. Right.
Okay, no points.
These questions are just, they leave a lot to desire. You know?
But someone listening is literally shouting, "The Count! It's the bloody Count!"
I know, sure.
Everyone
right.
knows it's the
But
Count.
I don't need this level of Iron Maiden minutia.
Well, lucky you,
God,
because there's
it's
another
getting worse,
question
isn't
coming
it?
your way. Holy Smoke was the first single to be released from No Prayer for the Dying. Mm-hmm. But according to Steve Harris, what track was originally envisaged as the record's lead single?
It's going to be something stupid like The Assassin.
No, it was actually Hooks in You.
Oh, that would have been a great single.
Yeah, but it's also the only song on the album.
Very unrepresentative of the
And
album.
written by someone who's no longer in the band.
Yeah,
But apparently
yeah.
that was, there's a little, if you go on YouTube, there's a kind of VT thing. Is that what I'm looking for? I don't know. Some little, where they're like in the studio talking about the record, and Steve
Kind
says,
of behind the scenes.
yeah, and Steve says that, oh yeah, it was going to be Hooks and You. But then I had this great camcorder footage of us larking around doing Holy Smoke. So basically we said, hey, we can just use that as the video and that could be the lead single.
Well, it's one way to save money.
Yeah. I feel like saving money might come up later on, actually.
Oh, really? Okay.
Well, I don't know. This is all pure speculative. Anyway, we'll get to it. Number 3.
Oh, God, how many questions are there?
Just 3.
Okay.
Just 3.
Okay.
So, sorry, I'm just chuckling to myself because I just put this in because no one would know the answer to this question.
Great.
Some versions of the cover of No Prayer for the Dying feature a quotation on the tombstone. What does it say?
I don't know. Is it something biblical?
I think it's actually something the band made up because I was trying to find the provenance of it, but all I could get back were links to No Prayer for the Dying. It says, after the daylight, the night of pain, that is not dead, which can rise again.
What?
Well, it sounds like they've slightly cannibalized the H.P. Lovecraft quote they use on the Live After Death album.
Yeah.
Which is not dead, in neons lie, yet in strange deaths, even death may die, I think. If that's right off the top of my head, I think I deserve some bonus Maiden points there.
I mean, you don't get any points in this. You're not on Be Quiz or Be Dead. I'm the only one who can potentially get points, but I very rarely get them.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair. I mean, it's still time, Sam. Still plenty of albums left.
It's going to get much worse from here.
Probably.
If I could get like negative points, that's
I can't wait till we get to the X Factor quiz. That will be a jolly good time.
Oi.
So let's get into the background of the album. Like I said, picking up in 1988.
Okay.
So Maiden have just released Seventh Son of a Seventh Son.
Magical album.
Great album.
Yeah.
Pretty much near universal acclaim.
I mean, it's got Maiden Voyager's acclaim. So, you know.
And, finally, Steve Harris can sleep at night. Now he's got the approval he's been desperately craving for all these
Now that
years.
Two Pillocks in South Wales have finally said, yes.
Yes.
We agree, both of us, this is a great album.
This is 10 out of 10 from both of us, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Perfect record in our eyes. And
He is.
He is indeed, yeah. Eyes and ears.
Sure.
All my sensory.
Okay.
But so obviously they go on tour. Oh, but before that, worth noting that at the time when Steve Harris is interviewed when Seventh Son comes out,
Yeah.
he does say to the press, I don't know how we're going to follow this album up.
Yeah.
Just bear that in the back of your mind, listener. Just keep that thought there as we go through the background.
That is such an ominous thing to say.
Isn't it? Yeah. It's almost like that might come back to bite him. So Steve is already worried about how he's going to follow on from Seventh Son.
Yep.
But
Doesn't bode well.
Doesn't bode well, but he doesn't need to worry about that yet because he's going on tour.
Yay!
As they usually do. The seventh tour of a seventh tour.
Schedule remains relentless.
Yeah,
The boys and Iron Maiden.
It gets better, but it is still pretty grueling. Also, I think it's worth to take a moment. The seventh tour of a seventh tour.
I mean, you've said the word tour so many times, it's not really registering as a word anymore.
That's my favourite Maiden tour name of the 80s, I think.
It is a great tour name. It is also daft as hell.
Or as I like to call it, the STOASTT.
That's even harder to say the seventh tour. The tour.
Anyway, the tour commences in April 1988, and it's probably, and we've got, we'll talk about Made in England a little bit, the VHS release that accompanies this tour, but
sure,
probably an even more ambitious stage show than the World Slavery Tour. Certainly at the time, people seem to regard it as Maiden's most ambitious
I think so.
stage production to date.
Having that sort of giant Eddie holding things and the hands that they can go on the stage and stuff. That
I think the Hands is a Somewhere in Time tour, but the sort of...
Oh, yeah, of course it is.
It's the sort of... But they do an amazing job of recreating...
But the big Eddie with the pink blob mat thing in his hand, that's Made in England.
Yeah, exactly, right. And it's quite,
that is quite spectacular.
Yeah, it's a pretty stunning visual centerpiece.
Although, having said that, whilst it is a stunning visual centerpiece in many ways, having recently watched the Made in England video and like reconciling that with my memory of the 2013 Made in England tour, 21st Century did it a lot better. It looks a lot less amateur.
There's something about... There is something to be said that the quality... At the very least, in terms of the production, the quality of 21st Century Maiden shows is a marked improvement from those shows that people idolise from the 80s. And I get it.
Yeah.
Because you can't recapture that vibrancy and energy necessarily. But yeah, as productions, they are, much better. And there's a few other firsts of this tour in terms of breaking new ground.
Okay.
Do you want to hazard to guess what any of these firsts are, things that Maiden do in this tour? First time Maiden.
Is it the first time they played Donington?
Yes, we'll get to that.
Okay. Is it the first time they play Russia?
I think this is a blind alley here.
Okay.
Think more about what might be on the stage or who might be on the stage that hasn't been on before. It's a keyboard player, Sam. They've got a live keyboard player.
Okay, right. God.
So they've got...
We already addressed that, though.
Well, yeah. So you should have got it right.
No, I assumed it was taken as granted.
No, there's much more to say about the Count, a.k.a. Mike Kenny, a.k.a. Steve's
I love
bass
the Count.
I love the fact the person they got to play keyboards is just Steve's bass tech.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just imagining the Sesame Street Count now.
I mean, that'd be great.
That would be great.
I'd be up for that.
I would watch that show.
Also, something I'd not clocked before, there's no humanoid wandering Eddie on the seventh tour of a seventh tour.
Oh, just big
inflatable
apocalyptic
Eddie
at the back, yeah.
Which, as Mick Wall notes in the official Maiden biography, is cool, but, quote, not quite as much fun. And I'm with Mick there. I want a walking Eddie.
I feel like you could describe a lot of Mick Wall's criticism or like commentary as cool but not fun.
Yeah.
I feel that's probably a summation of Mick Wall's career.
That's probably quite fair.
Sorry, Mick.
No offence, Mick Wall.
Obviously, you've done much better in life than me.
I mean, Axl Rose has said much worse about you, so...
Axl Rose wrote a song where he slammed you a lot.
He did, yeah. I mean...
And Bob Guccione Jr. from Spin.
Perhaps the sickest bird is that we're not that invested in Mick Wall to bother writing a song about it. We just subtly throw
One day
shade
when
at
we
him.
do a full cover album of Use Your Illusion 2.
But the other thing that struck me about the Seventh Tour is despite the very long name, the tour is
Saying
actually
tour.
the tour is quite a lot shorter than some of their previous tours. So they play 102 gigs compared to 151 they played on the summer.
And there's a
tour.
reduction.
Well, it's quite a big reduction. It was like a third, isn't it? Basically, they play.
Yeah, but it's still 102 gigs.
Yeah, it's like, don't get me wrong. It's still quite a packed touring schedule, but
Yeah.
there's also a sense that at this point they've earned the right to slow down. So the days of 6 consecutive shows are gone. Steve, this was the first tour he took his young family out on the road
Yeah.
with him. So Steve toured in a separate bus a lot of the time just to accommodate his family.
I mean, if we think back to, I guess it was probably the Seventh Son episode where we were talking about the vibe before the album, and it sounded like everyone had kind of been on the verge of burnout.
Yeah.
Maybe that was somewhere in time. Or maybe it was every album, basically.
Well, yeah, certainly Power Slave. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. They were, like on the World Slavery Tour, they are at the end of their tether. So it seems that they are penciling in more moments for relaxation. So Steve's got his family on the road, Nico's flying planes, Bruce is fencing, Adrian's fishing.
I mean, Bruce is always fencing.
He's always fencing, isn't he?
Even when they have a packed tour schedule, he's just fencing.
You can't stop him.
A man can fence, I guess.
True that. So they start off in North America, in Canada and the USA, and they are supported for many of those dates by an upstart LA glam metal band.
Wasp. No, because...
Upstart in 1988?
No, all right. What's happening in 88? I don't know. I've lost all conception of time at this point.
It's a little band, Sam, called
Poison.
Guns N' Roses.
Oh.
Yeah, big O, right?
Yeah.
They
That's
opened...
kind of a weird support for Maiden.
Yeah, but this is Guns N' Roses pre-Sweet Child of Mind.
Yeah. But even just stylistically, it's an odd support.
Yeah, but they play lots of shows of Maiden.
Wow.
Which is interesting, because we'll get to Monsters of Rock.
Yeah. I've seen Axel's interview.
Yeah. Should we address that now? You're like,
Why not?
So, despite having opened for Maiden, not just at the Monsters Rock Festival, but for many dates in their Canada and USA part of the tour, Guns N' Roses, Axl Rose, when interviewed backstage at Monsters Rock, is asked, "Do you have anything in common with Iron Maiden?" And he says, "I hope not."
Yeah. I mean, there's a weird thing about how Axl Rose viewed Guns N' Roses, and I guess probably still views, maybe, I don't know. But he kind of always sees them, like I remember reading, for instance, like in the early 90s, he saw his contemporaries much more like Nirvana than it was any other 80s bands. And that just feels a little bit like, no, you're slightly out of step with things. And then to kind of be throwing shade on, say, Iron Maiden feels a bit like, well, sure, you're punching up, but you're also coming across pretty awfully.
Yeah, well, he goes on to say that we're a rock and roll band, and he says, Iron Maiden, I don't know what that is. And then he says, I hope it's not catching, which is...
Yeah.
It's quite a good burn, I guess.
But when this band is taking you out on tour and, you know, is a very well-respected band, and like as far as like most records go, seem like pretty decent, nice people. Why you gotta be like that, Axl?
But I love that the interviewer then immediately after this little section throws over to Izzy Stradlin, who's also there, and says, "Have you got anything to add, Izzy?" And he just goes, "No." That's literally it.
I feel like that's probably Izzy's position throughout his entire tenure in Guns N' Roses. Is that? Do you care to elaborate?
But I think why that...
Not at all.
But the one reason I think perhaps why that Axl interview is kind of illuminating is it does represent a kind of changing of the guard.
Yeah.
Or sort of changing of attitudes. Because what Axl's saying about us being rock and roll and being street and being kind of gritty and Maiden being... He doesn't say this, I'm putting words in his mouth, but this kind of pompous, over-the-top, silly heavy metal nonsense.
Yeah.
A lot of the world is going to come round to Axl's way of thinking.
Absolutely. But then Guns N' Roses aren't, and like I say this as like a dyed-in-the-wall massive Guns N' Roses fan, but Guns N' Roses aren't as like gritty and real as they think they are. Especially as you come into the turn of the early 90s and you get the Use Your Illusion album.
Oh, yeah.
It's just kind of like, oh, you've kind of become everything you said you weren't.
Yeah. The fact that Axl's like, no, we're like a rock and roll band. And then in a few years...
Here's an 11-minute power ballad.
Estranged.
And look, don't get me wrong. I love Use Your Illusion 1 and 2. And I think Estranged is maybe one of the greatest songs ever written. But, you know, that's pompous as hell.
I mean, it's not rock and roll, is it? Let's be honest.
It is Elton John on crack.
So as well as Guns N' Roses, who else do you think, lovely segue, was supporting Maiden on their tour? There is a very Guns N' Roses adjacent band who opened for Maiden.
LA Guns.
Yes, opened for Maiden.
I was being facetious.
No, well, don't be, because stop that.
Is this,
you're right.
When was this? 88.
What's 88? Must be their first album, surely.
Yeah. When Cocked and Loaded come out, is that 89 then?
Maybe.
Yeah. Because that's the better album.
But other opening acts include Megadeth.
Yeah, that makes sense.
In
and
88.
That fits more to me.
Yeah. I mean, a bit of a curveball, Freely's Comet.
Yeah, sort of a curveball, but then at the same time, it's, I guess, like a 70s legacy artist trying to reestablish themselves. I just going to your point about like there being a bit of a changing of the guard. I guess towards the end of the 80s, Iron Maiden are starting to feel a little bit like dinosaur rock to some people. So Freely's Comet is probably...
So here's Ace Frehley.
Yeah, exactly, right?
But someone neither of us would call dinosaur rock. They opened for Maiden on one night of their tour. Okay, so they just do one night, but they open when Maiden play in Tampa, Florida.
Is it Sabotage?
It is Sabotage.
Oh my God!
Yeah, opened for Maiden on the 7th tour of the 7th tour in Tampa.
So 88 would be what? Guts Ballet, nearly.
Yeah, nearly.
So Hall of the Mountain Kings 87, right?
Yeah. So that,
wow.
Yeah, that in between.
Wow, what a time to see Sabotage.
What a night out that is.
Sabotage followed by Maiden.
Yeah. Just got to feel sorry for the people listening who are like, what the hell are they talking about? Sava, what now?
Look, after we do the spin-off Halloween podcast, I insist on a spin-off Sabotage podcast.
Dear Lord. I mean, as much as this sounds fun, I just don't think anybody else needs to hear that.
I have a lot of opinions about Sabotage.
And keep them to yourself.
Duly noted.
So, having done America, Iron Maiden return to the UK. They do a secret warm-up show at Queen Mary University, which is significant because they wanted to study medicine or engineering? It's because where Bruce got his history degree from.
Is it?
Yes.
Oh.
And then they went on to headline the Monsters of Rock Festival at Donington Park, 20th of August, 1988.
Cool.
Yeah, pretty cool. So, a few Iron Maiden facts. Monsters of Rock. First time they'd ever played the festival.
Yeah, I already guessed that.
Their first UK festival headline appearance that I'm aware of.
As far as the records go.
I just throw that.
By records, I mean what's Googleable.
Perhaps odd that Maiden haven't played Monsters of Rock until 1988.
I mean, how many Monsters of Rock existed beforehand?
Well, the first one's 1980.
Okay, so...
I'm not sure if there may have been a couple of years off in the intervening years, but you've had at least a good 5 or 6, I'd say.
Oh, for some reason I thought until... Yeah, I never realised it was actually annual. I thought it was quite a sporadic ad hoc thing.
Pretty much annual, I believe.
Okay.
But there is a sort of reasoning in this, because Maiden had been offered to play Monsters of Rock several times throughout the years.
Yeah.
But Rod Smallwood had been holding out.
We're too big for it.
Well, he'd been holding out for a headline slot. So he basically kept saying to them, every time they were offered, sub-headline, third in the bill, Rod was saying, get back to us when you will give us a headline slot.
I mean, fair play to Rod Smallwood. He has, like, a really strong vision for, like, growing Maiden's perception amongst people. Like, from the beginning, it's just, this is a headliner band.
And because most people just go, "Oh, great profile, fab, yeah, we'll do it. This is cool." And bear in mind, this is a live music landscape that is much less saturated when it comes to festivals than today. You know, like there are you've got Reading, Glastonbury, kind of it, other than a few ad hoc local things here and there. And when it comes to rock and metal, Monsters of Rock is the one.
Yeah.
And 1988, I mean, are you aware of the bill?
Yeah, because for years growing up, you had a poster of it on your bedroom wall. So let me see what I can remember. Megadeth.
Yeah.
Kiss.
Yeah.
Maiden, obviously.
Yeah.
Is it David Lee Roth?
Yeah, David Lee Roth. Diamond Dave.
That's all I remember.
Guns N' Roses.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And Halloween.
Halloween?
What an insane day. And bear in mind,
What is that, Keepers Part 1?
Yeah, or Part 2.
80. I think Part 2 is 88. Yeah, so yeah, it would be part... Wow.
It's one day, one stage. It's...
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. Is that the quite tragic Monsters of Rock?
It is, yeah. Well, we'll get to that in just a second. I mean, while staying on the positive note,
Halloween.
Yeah, band. But it also
I should know that Blevin's wearing a Halloween t-shirt today, despite me being the resident Halloween nerd.
Let the record state that I am indeed wearing a Halloween t-shirt.
Also, let the record state that I'm wearing an Iron Maiden t-shirt.
Yeah.
Because after being shamed on a previous podcast, I decided to buy one.
Good.
That fit me.
My work here is done. But
I feel bullied.
88 broke all attendance records for Monsters of Rock with Maiden headlining. So you have, on the day, there's over 100,000 people there.
That's bigger than Download is nowadays, right? Isn't Download meant to be 85,000?
Yeah, I think this year it was but I think on most given years it's about 60 to 80. I think. Yeah, occasionally it does that, but very rarely. But Maiden, well, as the headliner, beat the previous attendance record set by AC/DC in 1984, where apparently 66,000 people showed up.
Wow.
So it's a massive jump in numbers.
Yeah.
But yeah, as you alluded to, you can't really talk about Monsters of Rock 88 without the tragedy that occurred early in the day. So doing Guns N' Roses' set, there's rain beforehand.
Yeah.
The turf had been turned up into muddy slush. There was a kind of a push, some kind of scrum at the front. And yeah, 2 fans were killed doing Guns N' Roses' set, which is 18 and 20 years old, which you think,
horrible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No one expects to go to a gig and not come back, right?
No.
That's just... Yeah, unfathomable.
And, we've been at gigs at the past where things have been a little bit hairy, for want of a better word.
Well, we went to Carcass recently and might have seen someone get life-altering injuries.
Yes, yeah.
Which was pretty horrible.
So, I'm not dismissing it by saying these things do happen, at an event like that. And also others were injured as well. So, there's no silver lining to this, but apparently Guns N' Roses, whose set occurred during, did behave in a very commendable fashion. They got a message to them side of stage and they were very quick to calm and diffuse the situation.
Yeah.
But it's worth noting that Maiden set that was generally regarded as a, kind of a triumphant headline set.
Yeah.
They went on that stage not having been told what had happened earlier in the day.
Oh, really?
So Rod Smallwood made a conscious decision, despite the fact that, the kids were got from the crowd. They were taken to St. John's Ambulance.
Yeah.
And I believe they were pronounced dead before they got to hospital. The festival organisers knew, and Rod Smallwood knew, but he decided not to tell Maiden until after the gig had finished.
I'm not sure I agree with that decision. I mean, obviously, I'm not Rod Smallwood or a manager of any band or anyone of any stature, but I don't know. It feels a bit ethically odd to me.
It is a weird one, isn't it? And you're kind of also infantilizing the band a bit, aren't you?
Yeah. I mean, at this point, they're all probably pushing 30.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like, I think they can deal with that information themselves, but to the point where
and then it also gives them the option to kind of like acknowledge it as part of their set. And,
I mean, that's the thought, yeah.
Kind of make it more of a catharsis kind of thing for the crowd who will be traumatized on some level knowing that information themselves.
Well, but I guess it's interesting to know in a pre-internet age, how many people in the crowd did know what had happened earlier in the day.
Yeah.
And, of course, the organisers thought, well, do we go ahead with this thing? But then, as they said, they've got the issue of 100,000 people in the field.
Yeah.
Some people still arriving.
Yeah.
The risk posed by turning around to those people with an announcement over the PA saying show's over, go home, is arguably greater than trying to push ahead. And
well, I'm sure Guns N' Roses would tell you all about sort of abandoning sets and what kind of riots that sets off.
Well, indeed, yeah. An interesting little tidbit, though, from Steve Harris that I picked up on in Mick Wall's book was that Steve had reservations during the day about the safety of the crowd.
Oh.
So he recounts being side of stage whilst David Lee Roth was playing.
Yeah.
And noticing some people struggling down the front, and someone tried to send a message to Roth, but Roth was just like, I'm performing.
Just like jumping around everywhere.
I'm star kicking.
Oh, yeah!
Throwing my cape about.
Doing some splits.
Loving a good time. But apparently Steve was insistent on getting one of the assistant promoters.
But no one could get a message to David Lee Roth.
No. Scissor kicks are so high. It's got me in the face. Oh no. But Steve was the one apparently who got assistant promoter was like, you need to get a message to this guy.
Yeah.
And apparently did so. So when Steve originally learned what happened, he presumed it happened during David Lee Roth's set.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, seemingly, there was some kind of inquest after that.
Yeah, there would have to be, right?
Yeah, that led to changes in the way that festivals were organised. I mean, at the time, no one was implicated necessarily.
I mean, at the time, there just wouldn't have been the sort of safety infrastructure that there is now, right?
Yeah, because I have seen some reports saying one of the crowd barriers gave way, but I've not seen that corroborated elsewhere. So, I mean, other than the bad weather and just the sheer number of people, it's hard to know exactly what happened. But yeah, certainly, kind of adds a fairly tragic note to what should have been Maiden's, climactic. Yeah, climatic is to do with the climate. Climactic.
Well, that was riveting.
Yeah, that was some good. Just
welcome to Word Corner with Blevin.
Let me open the dictionary of my mind.
And immediately close it.
Yeah. But of course, Maiden will get another chance to headline Monsters Rock, to be discussed in a later episode.
Yes, in 93?
2.
Yeah,
that's right, close enough. We'll give you that.
Yeah, come on.
But also,
I haven't even heard the album. They're touring at that point.
After the Donington Monsters Rock sort of goes on the road in Europe.
Oh,
as a festival with most of the same acts, but occasionally Anthrax and Testament swapping it.
Nice.
In 88.
Nice.
I mean, people in 88 did not know how... I mean, okay, they had Thatcherism, that was bad. But they did not know how good they had
Thatcherism, but also The New Order by Testament.
Incredible. And so finally the tour wraps up with a run of British dates. Again, we love a bit of local colour, being the Cardiff-based podcast we are.
Sure. Where'd they visit?
Newport Centre.
Nice.
I mean, currently in the process of being demolished, but...
Take that, rock history.
Yeah. So, yeah, that will never happen again.
I mean, it wasn't going to happen anyway.
Yeah, the demolition of the Newport Centre is not the main reason that won't happen again.
That's what stopped Iron Maiden from coming to Newport in the 21st century.
And they play the Birmingham NEC, which is where we get the Made in England VHS release from. But this is where you see in some ways, the high watermark of Maiden's popularity in the UK. The tour comes to an end in London. 2 nights at the Hammersmith Odeon, 2 nights at Wembley Arena.
What?
Final night at Hammersmith Odeon.
In a row?
The same week, I think, yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, so they play
5 nights in London.
Including 2 Wembley Arena shows.
Wow.
But of course, that last show at the Hammersmith Odeon is significant for another reason.
Are you going to tell me the reason?
Well, I was hoping you might tell me something.
Is it where Made in England's filmed?
No, I've already established that was at the Birmingham NEC.
Oh, yeah, I stopped paying attention.
It's Adrian Smith's last full-length gig with Iron Maiden until 2000.
Wow.
Little did he or anyone else know.
Yeah, because I guess him leaving wasn't on the cards just yet.
No. So yeah, and people there wouldn't have known either. That was the last opportunity to see Aidan Smith do a full show of Iron Maiden. So let's fast forward to 1989.
Okay.
It's
Great year.
Great
year to be born. I'll tell you that for nothing.
A great year to be born. A great year
for Tetris.
A great year for... I'm struggling to think of any major world events that happened in 1989.
I think Street Fighter 2 maybe came out.
I was thinking more like, I don't know, the second Gulf War. But yeah, let's go Street Fighter 2.
Yeah, it might be 88. I'm not entirely sure.
And a great year for the guys of Maiden, because Rod has said 1989 is an official designated year off Maiden.
Year off Maiden?
Yeah, year off Maiden. So Dave Murray moves to Hawaii.
Spends a whole year playing Street Fighter 2.
Spends a whole year playing Street Fighter 2, but crucially in Hawaii. Steve busies himself editing the Maiden English. I've written here Maiden English. The Maiden England concert VHS.
I should also clarify, it turns out Street Fighter 2 came out in 1991.
Oh,
boo hiss.
Way off.
It was way off, yeah.
Come on. Should we talk a bit about the Maiden England VHS?
Yeah, we can.
And the subsequent update DVD reboot version.
Yeah, so I bought the DVD, I guess, a couple of months ago and watched it and had an enjoyable evening, enjoying Maiden doing quite a peak performance, but with the cinematography of an idiot. Basically.
Its name is Steve Harris, apparently, because he directed and edited it.
It's just, so for those who don't know, Steve Harris was very much responsible for the choice of shots, and he did the editing of the DVD or the original VHS. And if I remember correctly, the logic was he wanted it to feel like the view you get from the crowd.
Yes.
So a fan's eye view.
Which is, to his credit, is not a bad aim.
Except, to be honest, when I watch like a recorded live thing, I want to be able to see it properly. Like that's the appeal for me, especially as someone who goes to a lot of gigs and is quite short and is kind of used to, craning their neck to try and see the band. I would just much rather like a well-filmed, well-framed show,
Yeah, so what we...
Rather than seeing hands in front of Bruce Dickinson all the time.
Yeah, so what you end up with are a lot of low-angle shots that get a little bit jarring after a while.
Yeah.
Very few crowd shots.
Yeah.
Which, again...
And very few sort of full stage shots. So you never quite see everything in context. Like everything's quite close and punched in.
Which gives it the air of an almost like for TV release. You know what I mean? Like when you watch those 70s, there's a Black Sabbath gig of them towards the end of their first run of Ozzy at the Hammersmith Odeon, and it's like filmed on like 4 cameras, but sort of side of stage. And, you know what I mean?
I know
everything's super close up.
Yeah, and it's all a bit claustro.
Yeah, and you just sort of think they're playing a massive room. It'd be nice to get a sense of that scale.
Yeah, yeah.
Which apparently is what Rod Smallwood wanted. He wanted, being the manager, for everyone to go, look, we're a massive band playing a massive room.
Yeah,
everyone should see how massive we are. Which you don't really get a sense of at all, because it almost looks like Maiden could be playing quite a large like TV studio or something. It's
like you compare it to Live After Death, and whilst I don't know, I won't die on this hill, but I'd probably say the Made in England performance is better. I think the way Live After Death is shot is much more engaging.
Okay. Yeah, I've not thought about the performance per se.
I think Bruce sounds weird in Live After Death. I can't remember if I've said that on the podcast before, but...
I mean, you said something heinous and awful like that. But
he sounds great, but his voice is clearly just like a bit shot in Live After Death.
It shows a few signs of fatigue. I mean, maybe sounds better in Made in England, but...
I mean, to be fair, it's also the case in Made in England that, I mean, if you're comparing it to the record, Bruce doesn't sing a lot of the high parts in the way that he would on the record in both Live After Death and Made in England.
But I was thinking about it more from a visual point of view. And maybe it's just the way it's shot, but the band seem a bit more... Subdued is the wrong word, but they're surprisingly static a lot of the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Dave Murray is largely where Dave Murray is, Adrian's where Adrian is. Even Bruce, it's not quite the But again, maybe I'm just coloured by 21st Century Maiden, where we're used to seeing them.
I mean, to be fair, in the
running
Made in
around
England
and climbing
DVD, Bruce is like flailing about the place everywhere.
Yeah.
He's doing a lot of like that wobbling during the line, living on a balancing on a ledge.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah, doing the Evil Men Do.
Without exception, during every time he says that in the Men Do, he does a little wobble. It's like, you've played this out, Bruce.
Love it. Yeah. I think you should bring back the wobble. I'd love to do that.
You can't risk it nowadays.
Bring back the wobble. No, he's had like a new hip or knee, isn't he?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, got to look after it. So, yeah, I mean, a really good live snapshot of where the band are.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for all my criticism about it, it was a great watch. Really enjoyed it.
And fun fact, because I have it on VHS as well as DVD, the VHS was released as a VHS CD combi pack thing.
Oh.
So it originally was not released as a standalone live album.
Right.
It was much later, like around the time the DVD came out.
Yeah.
Buy it on CD and vinyl. But originally the CD came with the video cassette.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Because this is the age of the CD.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one thing I would say about the DVD is, I mean, it's partially because the DVD itself is now 10 years old, pretty much.
Yeah.
But it could really do with a proper remastering on the visuals. Like the
Yeah.
audio sounds good, but the video quality is quite grainy and quite blurry in the kind of way that, like, if you were watching it as a VHS on the CRT TV, probably look fine. But watching it on like a 4K flat screen, it's kind of like, oh, this doesn't work very well.
La-di-da for your 4K flat screen.
An HD flat screen, whatever flat screen you want. Just a modern television, Bledd.
La-di-da of your multi-thousand-pound television.
Not multi-thousand-pounds. I got it from Argos. It was quite cheap. I love a bargain.
Argos television.
All right, will you naff off?
Some of us find their televisions in a skip, Sam.
Blevin, you have a television the same size as mine. With a sound bar.
Yeah.
You bourgeois scum.
The soundbar was free,
Bourgeois scum.
but didn't come from my bourgeois sibling, so... So that's what Steve's doing. He's not messing
What a
around.
tangent.
I mean, of course, in 1980, Steve wouldn't know what a soundbar was.
No. Or Street Fighter 2.
Or Street Fighter 2, as it turns out. But he was editing a Maiden VHS. Bruce, as we've already discussed, is
He's writing his terrible novels.
writing his terrible novels,
Oh, and then Tattooed Millionaire. Right.
fencing, and Tattooed Millionaire. So presumably you've listened to that episode where we discussed that album. But if not, do that
Do that.
at some point.
Yeah.
Now, later.
I make a
Whenever
musical
suits you.
discovery.
Sam makes a musical discovery that will blow your mind.
Are we doing clickbait for the
meant to
previous
say, yeah.
episode?
When we put out the Tattooed Millionaire episode, Sam makes a musical discovery that will blow your mind. You'll just have to listen to an hour of waffle before we get to it. And now this is where it gets pertinent to what we're going to go on to discuss. So,
Okay.
Bruce records actually has more towards 1990. Well, no, he did start in 1989, I think. But Bruce is working on his first solo album, which comes about by pure chance as much as anything.
Yep.
Adrian Smith also starts a new, in little air quotes there, side project, ASAP. That stands for Adrian Smith and Project.
Which is a terrible name.
It's a terrible name. Yeah.
Like ASAP is kind of a cool name, but as soon as you put words behind it, it's a bit like, ugh.
And the fact on the cover, they actually put what it stands for in tiny little words
come
underneath
on,
the letters.
Come on.
Yeah.
You should have just done like a wasp or a kisp.
Yeah, exactly.
Kiss.
Yeah. As a quick little tangent, do you know what Blackie Lawless said when he was asked what wasps?
We ain't sure, pal.
Oh, that's good, isn't it?
That is a good response.
He's very quick.
I'm sure he pre-wrote it.
Yeah.
Like, when you come up with a name like Wasp, like someone's going to ask me what this stands for.
And he's just been
I'm
waiting
going to come up
use
with
that
a
line.
list of things. White Anglo-Saxon Protestants, and we ain't sure, pal. And there were other things.
We are sexual perverts, was the one that was often suggested.
Like, I bet he has a little notebook in his like little leather bondage gear that he wears on stage, just where he writes all these different little explanations for what Wasp could stand for. So that when he gets interviewed post-gig, he's there.
He's got it. And so into that pantheon of acronym band names,
Yeah.
enter ASAP. I said new in my slight air quotes there because, of course, this is basically the entire population of Hackney.
The musical project rather than the actual population
this is
of
actually
Hackney in
everyone who
London.
lives in the suburb of Hackney.
It wouldn't fit in the recording studio.
So this was, again, you have to go back a few episodes now to when we were discussing what Adrian got up to after the Power Slave tour. And he puts together a band with some friends. Also Nick and McBrain, called The Entire Population of Hackney, and they play 2 shows. It's a bit of fun. They do a bit of writing. But it doesn't really go anywhere past those 2 gigs. But over the course of the 2 years that follow, Adrian is clearly thinking about those songs. He's sitting on them. He seems quite encouraged by the fact the guys in Maiden pick up some of the songs for the B-sides.
Yeah.
Including your favourite Iron Maiden song of all time.
I mean, it's not my favourite, but it is an absolute banger, Reach Out.
Reach Out, absolute banger. Also That Girl. Interestingly, Adrian is also encouraged to do something with this material he's written by Rod Smallwood. And so Adrian has been obviously writing material for Maidens pretty much almost since the moment he joins.
Yeah.
But up until The Entire Population of Hackney, anything he wrote that didn't fit into the Maiden bracket or mould, he just discarded. But then Maiden records some of the songs as B-sides and he goes, okay, maybe I should indulge these other songwriting ideas I had that usually I wouldn't have. And Rod is the one who heard some of the demos that Adrian put together and said, you should do this as a solo album.
That's surprising, because I thought Rod in general was not that into the solo album.
No, well, it is surprising until I heard Rod's reasoning. Now, Rod listened
I wanted to keep Adrian happy
Yeah.
so that he didn't leave the band.
Well,
is that it?
No, not quite, actually. I mean, Rod just didn't see it as a threat to Maiden at all. I mean, he likened Adrian's solo material as being similar to Bruce Springsteen and Bryan Adams, and just thought this is something entirely different altogether.
Okay.
And cynically, Rod is actually also thinking, as well as probably part of him thinking this will be a good outlet for Adrian for this side of his musical personality.
I can make more money.
Well, he's also thinking, and this will come up again later on, Maiden's popularity beginning to wane in the USA a bit.
Yeah.
Certainly begin to stall. Maybe the American market will go for Adrian's more poppy, sheeny, and then some of that will bounce back in Maiden's direction, is perhaps where he's going with it. But anyway, so basically Adrian reunites the entire population of Hackney, bar Nick and McBrain, who I believe is getting married, which is why he can't record the album.
Right.
So he gets on drums.
Clive Burr?
Good guess, but the son
Thunderstick.
The son of Thunderstick. With the gimp mask, he's back, everyone. The son of a very famous drummer. Arguably the most famous drummer.
Is it Jason Bonham?
No, it's Zach Starkey.
Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe Jason Bonham's a small child at this point.
I think he was doing his Bonham stuff by the 80s.
Okay.
Yeah, so he had a band called Bonham. But anyway, it's the son of none other than Ringo Starr.
Cool.
Plays on Aidan Smith's debut album, which comes out in September 1989 through EMI, who apparently gave the band, quote, a shitload of money.
Great.
And
it was a very different time for music.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? When an Adrian Smith solo vehicle
funded
is getting tons of money from EMI.
Yeah.
But it basically sinks without a trace commercially.
I mean, it's also without a trace now. I've been trying to find that album so that I can actually properly listen to it beyond like a YouTube rip. But no physical version seem to exist of God's Green Earth.
I don't think it's ever been reissued. I've got a vinyl copy that I picked up for virtually nothing secondhand. And I did...
Was it from Kelly's?
Probably was from Kelly's, actually, yeah. And I purely bought it out of curiosity. And it is definitely worth listening to. It's...
Yeah, the songs I heard of it sound fantastic.
Yeah, it's... There's something about it. The material doesn't quite stick in the way that Adrian's best stuff does, but it's still really worth a listen. And I can't help but feel... Adrian has never said this, by the way, but it must have been galling when Bruce Dickinson literally cobbles something together and just throws out Tattooed Millionaire. And he's got this labour of love, these songs he really cares about, and it just does absolutely nothing commercially.
That is deeply upsetting.
It is upsetting, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And, well, who knows to what extent that influences what happens next. So,
Written dive, 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 mate.
yeah, you should have done. I mean,
That's a bestseller right there.
instead of your earnest emotional rock songs,
No.
Zulu Lulu. That's what people want.
Yeah. Give me bad, questionable jokes.
So all this is leading up to coming towards the end of 1989, Maiden gearing up to record the new album. So they have a launch party for the Made in England VHS. Yay, everything's great.
Yeah.
We're all friends. So they all decide, right.
But they wouldn't leave as friends.
They wouldn't leave alive. So the plan is we're going to reconvene at Steve Harris's, what looks like a rather plush house in Essex, I believe, to start writing for the new album. Now, the plan initially is they're going to take a few months at Steve's house to write, get ideas together. But Steve, after a matter of weeks, decides, oh, actually, we've got an album's worth of material. Let's just record this.
Oh. Well, that explains so much already, to be honest.
Again, bear this in mind when we come to discuss No Prayer for the Dying. Adrian, on the other hand, is going, well, hang on, I've only got one song, which goes on to be Hooks in You.
What a song.
Which a great song that appears in the album. But he's desperate for more time to get ideas together. Because bear in mind, Adrian and Bruce have gone off on solo albums. Steve hasn't, right? So Steve
So Steve just has a bank of material.
Yeah, he's had 1989. Other than editing, he's got all the stuff ready to go. Adrian doesn't. Adrian seems frustrated. He wants more time to write. And this seems to compound some other grievances and issues Adrian's had with the way Maiden's going and things that have happened in the past.
Right.
Not least this decision that Steve Harris has made, that this album they're about to record has a very clear mission statement. It's going to be a back to basics album.
And is there much sort of information out there about why Steve decides this needs to be back to basics?
Basically none at all. And I've thought about this so much.
Lying in bed, wide awake. Thoughts whirring away.
Steve?
Why, Steve? Why did you go back to basics?
Well, because ultimately that's where this record kind of goes wrong. Right? It's that initial mission statement.
Yeah.
This is no frills, back to basics. The only clues...
No frills, no thrills either.
Yeah. No thrills for the dying, if you will. There are some comments made by Steve, and Bruce seems to follow suit around the time, which suggests that for some reason, despite the acclaim Seventh Son got, they seem to think it didn't quite resonate with some of their fans.
Right.
And they seem to think that, oh yeah, there's the keyboards, things are getting a bit overblown, a bit over the top, yada, yada, yada. And there's a sense that...
take that message now.
Oh dear, everyone. Wow.
I mean, it's not... I think we all know how I feel about Senjutsu, so it's fine.
Moving on from that. But it's interesting that having released this great album, they're beginning to row back on it quite quickly and beginning to second guess themselves.
There's no particularly negative critical reception. That's like they've done a huge misfire here. They've gone up their own.
Oh, not for Seventh Son. I mean, other than the odd critic that seemed to think, oh, the keyboards, this is a bit proggy.
Sure, but it's broadly really well received, right?
Broadly, other than in America.
America.
Yeah, it's always America. But where
we know about your dislike of Iron Maiden, America.
But even if the critics aren't overtly out for it in the States, it doesn't chart as well as Somewhere in Time.
Yeah.
It doesn't sell as many copies as Somewhere in Time.
Right.
It's far from a flop, but it feels that it has done literally nothing to further Maiden's momentum in the States.
Interesting. It's particularly interesting when you think of, like, as we discussed at the time on Somewhere in Time, the sort of narrative of Maiden mythologizes Seventh Son in a way that Somewhere in Time is not. Like, even amongst American fans, like, Seventh Son is nowadays well regarded, whereas Somewhere in Time is well regarded, but it's still sort of off the beaten path of your sort of Maiden checklist.
Yeah, which is not what Maiden was saying, around 89, 90, which is basically, oh yeah, we sort of get it. It seems that some people didn't quite like Seventh Son, almost a sense themselves of them kind of acknowledging that, oh yeah, we got a bit carried away, everything got a bit over the top, etc., etc.
But it ties into what you were saying before, right? That actually, with that Monsters of Rock sort of era, there is a change at hand, right? There is a tonal shift in rock and metal music that's happening in the late 80s. And we touched on it, Seventh Son, I think in particular, that, you have thrash happening, you have Guns N' Roses happening, all these sort of much more direct bands, and Maiden have kind of looked back to the 70s to find their way forward. So it kind of makes sense that even if the critical reception was really good, they might kind of sense that feeling in the air of, all these younger bands are, they're not doing these sort of like pompous records. They're not doing something with keyboards.
No, but that's absolutely spot on.
There's a sea change.
And there's a weird thing with Steve Harris. He's a bit of an enigma, because on the one hand, he's doggedly saying, Iron Maiden do what Iron Maiden do, and we don't care what anyone else does.
Until we care.
Until actually, do we look a little bit... Do these trousers look a bit silly? Hang on a second. Do you feel like a tit? We've got like a giant ice world behind us. What? I honestly think that's partly to do with it. When they're showing bills of Megadeth and they're like bringing out their giant like icebergs and things.
Yeah. You're showing bills with Megadeth, which is just 4 guys all in leather jackets being pretty aggy.
Yeah, Nike high tops, like skinny jeans, job done. So
like metal grating on the stage, fencing even.
And the other interesting thing I think is worth pointing out is Maiden aren't the only band around this time who think they need a stripped back to basics album, because in 91 Metallica released the Black Album. Yeah,
but
things went rather differently.
Yeah, but I wouldn't call the Black Album a back to basics album.
No, because that's how Metallica were sort of talking about it at the time. We're stripping back all those long songs, the intricate arrangements. They literally talked about it.
But they never not had the long songs, so they're not going back to anything. For them, they're just simplifying, as opposed to actually sort of trying to recapture something.
Yes, you're right. Metallica actually aren't going back to Kill 'Em All, are they?
No. What they're doing is moving forward by simplifying things and then making it every riff sound so huge.
Yeah, which is not what Maiden do.
Maiden need a producer. No, I mean, they have lots of good producers, but we'll come on to No Prayer, but the riffs ain't big.
So, but Adrian was actually the one who was, I was going to say the whistleblower here, as if he's covered some...
He called the hotline. Steve's, he's making us record in a farm, and...
it sounds bad.
He says the album's done, but I wrote one song, and even then, it's only a co-credit. I don't like it, Rod.
Well, Adrian didn't like it at all. He didn't agree with the back to basics approach.
Yeah.
And there had been other things bugging him. For example, he sort of was...
Steve.
I mean, seemingly a lot of the decisions, if not on a personal level, because apparently Steve and Adrian are really close from the band, but he was getting annoyed at the way that Maiden kept speeding up songs live. So there's all these things coming together. And the long and short of it is a meeting is held between Adrian and the other members of the band, which is meant to be an opportunity for Adrian to voice his grievances. And he goes through these concerns with Steve. And he's not necessarily looking to leave the band, though. That's the thing. I think he just disagrees with the direction they're going in. He needs more time to write songs, all these other issues he has. But Steve seems to take this, and I've tried to sort of triangulate all the different accounts of how this meeting went down.
Like a Rashomon effect of different perspectives.
So Steve seems to take this as, so you don't like being an Iron Maiden, you're not committed to being an Iron Maiden. And Aiden seems to sort of almost suggest, well, not like this, no.
I'm not committed, but I've done like a decade of touring the world and writing music for this band.
But what Steve is...
Pretty unfair of Steve.
Well, it is, isn't it? Steve is clearly just looking for reassurance here. And so as far as I can transpire this meeting goes, Steve just ends up saying to him, rather than going, oh, mate, I had no idea you felt like that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. You don't like the direction we're going in. Let's see if we can meet halfway here. Let's see if we can work this out. Steve's basic response is to go, well, look, if you're not into this 100%, maybe you shouldn't be in the band. Do you want to be in the band? Adrian kind of wavers a bit and Steve makes the decision for him. And says,
horrible.
If you don't, well, but weirdly, they kind of split relatively amicably. But Steve,
what they really needed was a band therapist and
Enter
4 cameras.
Yeah, well, yeah. Can you imagine? No prayer for
Some
the dying,
kind of Maiden.
The docu drama. Jeez. That's it. I think the best account of how this all played out, though, is from Bruce. So this is what he writes in his autobiography. Nobody saw it coming, i.e. Adrian's departure. And I don't believe Adrian did either. I don't believe he wanted out. He just wanted to make it better. And I get that sense as well. I don't think Adrian's going
that's what it
to
sounds
leave.
like.
Bruce goes on to say, conversation turned to accusation. Lovely turn of phrase. And in the end, it was our own hubris, fueled by seemingly untouchable success, that sealed his fate. He was not fired. He simply walked into a lift shaft where there was no lift.
You can really tell that Bruce Dickinson wrote his own biography. It's just
no ghostwriter would come up with that phrase.
Ghostwriter would probably edit that out. It's like, no, that's a bit frilly. But no.
So, yeah.
No one edits Bruce Dickinson.
Kind of, it's almost like Adrian ends up leaving the band by mistake or has quit.
Yeah.
It's a very odd one. And what I don't quite understand is how no one really comes to bat for Adrian.
I mean, yeah, it's crummy, but at the same time, this is a band of 5 blokes approaching 30 who have lived in their own sort of little maiden-y world for quite a while. And I don't know. I don't know any of them, but just judging by how lots of men are, they're not great communicators.
No, that's fair.
And so I could see how, in some ways, confrontation's probably easier than actually dealing with the emotional content of like, oh, this person's upset. How do we make it better? Sometimes it's easier to just be like, this person upset. Why don't they leave?
Do you get a sense that maybe they've taken Adrian for granted as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he writes the best songs.
Well, steady on now.
Okay. But I mean, I could see how if you're in Adrian Smith's position, you contribute a lot creatively to the band and to its sound, and you're disempowered when it comes to the decision making, because fundamentally it's always Steve Harris's band. He calls the shots, but even Bruce has some modicum of power. It feels like Smith never has that.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, actually. I mean, it certainly feels to me that the other guys in Maiden are quite blasé about letting go of someone who is such a massive asset to their band.
Yeah.
You know, creatively, everything else. He's written some of their biggest hits, and yet they seem to just sort of let him go as if it's like, oh, well, I guess he's not into this anymore. Let's find someone else. It's like, no, he's Adrian Smith. He literally, writes about half the music on some of your albums. He was in Somewhere in Time, pretty much about half that record he wrote.
But then I guess they've weathered big changes in the lineup before, right? So maybe they're just pragmatically thinking, oh, it'll probably be all right.
Yeah, and indeed, they've weathered big changes and gone on to greater strengths and higher highs.
Not this time.
So Aiden's gone. Remarkably, the way things went down, there was very little animosity between the two.
Right.
Adrian and Maiden. So
that's good.
It's good. It's just, I think it says a lot about Adrian Smith. If I was Adrian Smith, I'd be quite annoyed.
Well, yeah, he didn't mean to leave, but was sort of ultimatumed out.
Yeah, well, that's a really good way of putting it, actually. He was ultimatumed out of the band. Well,
when he was just trying to, improve things.
Yeah, in other words, Steve said, look, it's my way or the highway.
There will be no criticism of Iron Maiden
it's going to be a back to basics album, right? So Adrian's gone, and enter Yannick Gers.
Yeah. Who we discussed quite a lot in the previous episode.
We did, yeah. So
We don't need to go into too much detail about him again.
Yannick Gers, his parents were born. Although Yannick Gers' dad was a Norwegian sailor, I believe, hence the name.
Hence the name Gers,
Well, and the first name Yannick as well.
I suppose.
Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, obviously, because you've all listened to our previous episode, you knew that Yannick Gers is the collaborator who's worked with Bruce on Tattooed Millionaire.
Yeah.
Previous to that, his CV included spells with the Nwabon band White Spirit, where he met most of the guys in Iron Maiden.
Yeah.
Despite the fact, as Maiden make perfectly clear, they're not an Nwabon band. Never have been, never will be.
Yeah. Yeah, that is... It's weird.
Yeah, that's... Again, go back to our chat about Michael Hand's excellent Denim 11.
Wonderful book.
The All History of the New Wave of British Heavy Metal. Have you finished it yet?
I'm 2/3 through.
It's good. It's good.
It is very good.
But yeah,
and hilarious at many points.
The declaration at the start from Phantom Management that Maiden never
a Nwabon band is just kind of... And not only were they never a Nwabon band, but they refused to talk about Nwabon.
Yeah.
Whereas at least with Def Leppard, they're kind of like, yeah, we don't really see ourselves as a Nwabon band. But Joe Elliott will tell you a lot of things.
Yeah.
So here's a lot of interviews with Joe Elliott.
So basically, Yannick Gers came up in the same scene as the Maiden guys. He's in White Spirit. He gets the Gillan gig, which is a massive gig for guitar player.
Yeah.
That all sort of comes to nothing in the end, sadly, because the Gillan band dissolves. He has a bit of time working with Fish, the former Marillion singer.
We are just retreading the last episode.
Well, we're retreading it, but this is the recap.
We don't need the recap. It was the previous episode.
Last episode.
Last time on Dragon Ball Z.
Why don't we start each podcast with a last time on Maiden Voyages? Yannick Gers
This summer
is thinking of selling his gear and becoming a sociology teacher. But then...
after playing with Fish from Marillion.
But having just collaborated with Yannick, obviously he's the obvious choice, really, for the vacant guitarist gig. And as far as I'm aware, he's the only person who's auditioned.
So that's what I was going to ask, is do they even entertain anyone else? Or is Bruce just like, oh, hey, I know a guy?
Yeah, and I think so. Oh, great, get that guy. But apparently Yannick first realised he was in line for the Maiden gig because the Adrian's departure had been kept under wraps for a little bit before it was made public. And Bruce picked up the phone to Yannick and asked him if he could learn a few Maiden songs. And Yannick...
Oh, I wonder what that could be.
Well, no, but Yannick was about to go on tour with Bruce. So Yannick's response was, I thought we said we weren't going to play Maiden songs on the tour. So Yannick has not got an inkling. He's presuming that Bruce is wanting to play some Maiden songs for their solo tour they're about to embark on. And so at that point, Bruce has to say, no, Adrian's left. We want you to come down, play a few songs with us.
I didn't realise there was that overlap.
Yeah, it was
sort of two things.
Things moved really quickly.
Yeah.
And Yannick also apparently is initially, once the truth is out, has sort of gone, because I'd not quite clocked this before, but Yannick has never played in a band with another guitar player.
Oh.
He is the only guitar player in White Spirit. In Gillan, there's a keyboard player.
Yeah.
Carl McCoy. Just showing off my Gillan knowledge there.
Sure. No one's impressed.
That might be the bass player. Don't look it up at home. It's Carl McCoy. It's not Carl McCoy. I think he played bass. Anyway, so he was a bit worried about how you'd fit into a two-guitar setup where he'd always seen himself as...
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's also ironic considering that nowadays he is the most superfluous guitarist in the band. And I say that with, he's a fantastic guitarist. It's just he's slightly underutilized.
Yeah, which is, Maiden's loss, I say.
Yeah.
Yannick is a good egg.
There should be many more three-part harmonies.
Oh, yeah. So he's invited down to audition. I call it audition. It sounds just like they ran through 3 songs.
Yeah.
He did a good version of The Trooper, and everyone was like, oh, great. Welcome to Iron Maiden. Oh, and we're starting recording the album tomorrow.
They're treating this whole thing really cash.
Yeah.
Like, Adrian's going, all right, we'll find someone. Oh, here's this guy. Great. Oh, he's in. Wonderful.
Cash is the word. It's almost like this is a very cash album.
Yeah.
As if no one is...
It's almost like no one cares.
I mean, that's it, isn't it? It's almost like no one's really that bothered about it. But again, Bruce, in that little excerpt I read from his autobiography, talks about the hubris, the sense that Maiden...
Too big to fail.
Well, yeah, I feel like they can do no wrong. Like,
Oh, Brucey boy.
it'll be fine. We're massive. Everyone loves us. Adrian's gone. No big deal. Get Yannick in. Yeah, he can play the trooper. Perfect.
What about the other songs? Look, we'll just play the Trooper 10 times. Be fine.
We'll start recording the album tomorrow, Yannick. What, you don't know the songs? You'll pick them up as you go along. It's fine. Don't worry.
Don't worry, we don't know them either.
But as usual, the Maiden PR machine is keen to put a very positive spin on all this about getting Yannick back in the band. And again, if you seek out that little mini doc that's appeared on YouTube around the No Prayer for the Dying, one of the things that Steve says that is quite bizarre, and I get he's trying to put a positive spin on it, but he seems to imply that, now Yannick's here, we've got a genuine twin lead guitar attack. And he suggests that Adrian Smith was... He says something to the effect of, yeah, because Adrian was always more of a rhythm player.
Come on.
Yeah. Pull the other one, son.
Get off it. I mean, what a rude thing to say, if I'm honest. Yeah. And also, especially considering what you just said about Yannick having never played with another guitarist. It's like, maybe that's not that suited to twin leads.
Yeah. Yeah, and also, that's just a lie, isn't it? Adrian's an amazingly guitar player.
Barefaced lie.
But I guess that I get they're trying to put a positive spin on it, but yeah.
Too positive.
This whole thing about, now we've got a proper lead guitar attack and...
Oy.
Yeah. But in hindsight, Bruce had changed his tune. I thought, and bear in mind, Bruce wrote this in his autobiography that came out fairly recently. So about Yannick...
Well, you say recently, like 8 years now?
Well, maybe. But, but I'm talking like, this is contemporary. Yeah. Bruce said, Jan's guitar style and sound were more spiky and less processed. But I hoped that his arrival would see a bit more of the Yannick that played on Tattooed Millionaire start to rub off in the Iron Maiden sound. Caught up in the enthusiasm of the first album, it was too much to expect of him.
Oh, ooh.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah. But also, so it's interesting because we kind of touched on that with Tattooed Millionaire, that you quite astutely said that you were wondering if Steve Harris kind of had an eye on what Bruce was doing solo-wise and to see how that would inform the next steps for Maiden. And what Bruce is saying there kind of chimes with that sense of, I hoped Yannick would kind of bring some of that Tattooed Millionaire flair to the Maiden camp.
Well, yes, and...
But he didn't.
But he did nothing.
Because they recruited him the day before they started recording.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, Yannick presumably barely knows where he is at this point. He's just been invited to...
He's only learned the Trooper.
I'm in a barn in Essex. I've just played some songs. I'm in Iron Maiden, recording an album tomorrow. Okay.
I know, bring your daughter.
Yeah, this is a lot to take in. Yeah, he does know that one, to be fair.
Yeah.
Which takes us so nicely to the recording of the album. And, the big talking point when we did the Seven Son app was, keyboards. Mm-hmm. And the big talking point this time around is this whole...
Farm.
Farm. A barn. But is this back to basics ethos that we've discussed already?
Yeah.
But you mentioned, the sense that perhaps Bruce's solo album inspired this a bit, because Steve's vision behind the album is we're going to do it quickly. It's going to have a live feel.
Yeah.
It's going to try and... Well, this is how he tries to theorize it. It's going to capture that live energy. So we're not going to overthink it too much. Just, we've got the songs.
Maybe think it a bit more.
Yeah, maybe think it a bit more, Steve. But do you think he might have, and he's never acknowledged this as far as I'm aware, but do you think he might have had one eye on Bruce and gone, wow, he recorded that in 2 weeks? And it commercially did quite well. And we spent tons of money and time on that last record.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, there's probably something quite exciting about the idea of, okay, what if we just did it quick and we did whatever naturally came to us and we didn't labor over it too much and we didn't overthink it and craft it too much. Instead, we did something that's kind of raw and a bit more organic. which is a great mindset and how lots of classic albums were recorded, especially early albums. But it's just not what happened here. But yeah, I think you're right. There was probably like looking at Tattooed Millionaires like, that did much better than really it had any right doing.
Yeah.
We could do that.
But that's also what inspires, and again, this is what Bruce actually did not do in Tattooed Millionaire. But so Steve decides, he says, you know what? We've actually got these songs together really quickly. Instead of hanging around to go into a professional recording studio, let's just bring the studio to us.
Yeah.
So they convert, I say convert, they seem to just kind of hastily kind of cobble together a recording studio of sorts in Steve's barn.
Yeah.
They get the Rolling Stones mobile recording unit, which in itself is it was immortalised in Deep Purple's song Smoke in the Water.
Yeah.
To make records with a mobile, when they're at that hotel in Zurich. So Machine Head, the Deep Purple albums, recorded on that same...
I didn't realise that.
Yeah, Rolling Stones mobile recording unit. But even that turned out to be something of a disappointment when that showed up.
Well, because by that point, it's 15 years old.
Yeah, exactly. Dickinson described it as antiquated.
Yeah.
So they've got this...
Of course it would be. Machine Head was recorded on it.
Yes. So they've got this redundant bit of technology in a room that is just...
That would be like nowadays trying to record on... You remember when we were 16 and you had like that little Boss 8 track?
Yes.
That would burn... That you couldn't... It had 8 channels. You couldn't export to MP3, so you'd have to burn a CD from it and then rip the CD later. There was no mixing capabilities, barely any EQ, and everything was done with like a little LCD screen. It would be like recording with that in 2023.
Yeah. Only from the sounds of it, it sounds like that was a better recording studio than the Rolling Stones.
Technology moves fast.
Which in my head is just a man in a car with a cassette tape, just being like, okay, when do you want me to hit record? There we go. It does, though, make it the first Iron Maiden album recorded in the UK since Number of the Beast.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So...
But at what cost?
Well, let's say at what cost? I mean, presumably saving a bit of money in the bank there.
Yeah, okay. I meant more like spiritual cost.
Well, yeah, because
quality cost.
As much as Steve tries to rationalise this as a capturing the live energy, this is an album on the cheap.
Yeah.
Come on, let's be honest. This is I mean, whether that was a motivation or not, this is not an expensive record to make. But despite that, kind of a safe pair of hands, because Martin Birch, again, is behind the recording desk. Mm-hmm. Apparently he was quite sceptical about the barn idea.
Can't think why.
No, being a proper producer, thinking, hey guys, recording studios are quite good places to record albums.
They're sound treated and not made of wood.
Yeah.
Or like thin panelled wood.
They aren't,
not echoey.
There isn't livestock walking around.
There's no hay.
But
can we just stop for a second? Why does Steve have a barn?
Because he's bought a big country manor, isn't he?
But what does he do with his barn? Like
record albums.
Okay, but did he have farm animals or anything? Or
I don't know. You might have a small holding.
Just this unused barn.
Well, I think like a lot of country. I think Steve's property has many buildings.
Yeah,
many historical buildings.
Okay,
one of which is a barn.
I feel like if you're making a back to basics album, that's sort of meant to recapture your early, more street level days when you're like a touring club band or pub band in their case, and you're on the mean streets of East London. Maybe the barn on your multi-million pound property in the Essex countryside might not capture that down to earth vibe.
Yeah, I see.
Just like on a sort of cosmic level, like that's pretty gilded.
Well, wait until you hear some of Steve's other suggestions for trying to make the album more raw.
We're all gonna wear diamond necklaces at all times.
Well, one of them is absolutely wild. But speaking at the time, and this chimes in what I said before, Steve said, it's mainly more aggressive than the previous albums. And he says, I think that some of our fans were disappointed in the musical orientation we had taken lately. So I think they'll be happy to see that we're going back to a more aggressive and powerful style. The band still has the fire.
Sorry.
Anyway, and like I said, the band still has the fire anyway. Is he just referencing got the fire?
Montrose, yeah.
Montrose. He can't get away.
He always wants a Hagar reference in there somewhere.
But later... So
Man loves Sammy.
He really does. But this is what Steve House had to say about the record later. We tried to get the album to sound as live as possible. For me, it didn't quite come off.
Because we recorded it in a barn.
Wait for it.
Okay.
But again, this is Steve talking now. It depends on who you're talking to. Some people think it's our best album, and some people think it's our worst. Me, I don't think it's our best, but it's certainly not our worst. Nobody thinks this is your best album, Steve. No.
Yeah.
And if
that
they did,
has never been a consensus from anyone.
I would honestly question that person's sanity. I'm not being flippant. I would... If you
being a little flippant.
No, I'm not. If someone came up to me and said, "No Prayer for the Dying is my favourite Maiden album,"
just no, like, hello, Blevin. Just straight in with that.
Straight in with that.
Like this person you've never met off the street. No Prayer for the Dying is my favourite Iron Maiden
I would
album.
take 2 steps backwards and reach for my mobile phone and start discreetly dialing for the emergency services.
Police.
Police.
This person's a criminal.
But yeah, I mean, wow. Does anyone think this is the best Maiden album?
I mean, I'm sure in 1990 someone did.
Yeah.
In the way that like every time a new album comes out from a popular band, a lot of people, not a lot, but a vocal like pocket of people will kind of be like, yeah, this is the best thing they've ever done.
Yeah.
I'm sure someone said that about Senjutsu when they're wrong.
I mean, I'm sure if this was the only Iron Maiden album you'd ever heard, this might be... You'd consider this to be the best Iron Maiden album.
Yeah, but then that's just by default. Well, it's also the worst at the same time.
Wow, that's a moral quandary.
It's like Schrodinger's Maiden album.
But this is... One of the ways... How do you think Steve thought this album could have been improved when he was chatting to Mick Wall about it?
By keeping Adrian Smith, by recording it in an actual studio, by writing some good songs. Did he say any of these things?
No. Well, those are the correct answers to that question. But Steve said to Mick Wall, the album would have sounded better with, quote, audience noise.
What?
Yeah. So Steve wanted...
If they made it like a faux live album,
Yeah.
like Unleashed in the East. Or
Yeah. If it was just like, you know...
Canned crowd. Just at random bits, like with no real sense. Not beginning of end of song.
No.
But just like mid-chorus.
Just occasional.
Just someone going, woo! Yeah!
Bruce, though, has not been so kind in his appraisal of the album. He just described it as shit-sounding. I think specifically referring to the
No
production.
missing words there.
But again, I also found an interview with Dave Murray where he's talking about this on the No Prayer on the Road tour and describes it as almost like what would be a natural follow-up to Number of the Beast.
You what?
Yeah. So that's Dave Murray for you. Yeah, apparently this would be a natural follow-up to Number of the Beast.
I mean, if your idea of a follow-up is a dramatic drop in quality, yes.
Indeed. So, in short, 3 weeks in the studio and the album is done, and it is released on the 1st of October 1990.
Cool.
Yeah, that's No Prayer for you.
Very exciting.
So I guess...
Well, not really.
No. I mean...
I'm overselling it.
I mean, the build-up was probably quite exciting.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be very excited if I was, old enough in 1990. This is the first Maiden album that came out in our lifetimes as well, isn't it?
Oh, that's a weird thought.
Yeah.
So you're saying that Maiden had already peaked by the time we were even alive?
I mean, what I'm saying is, perhaps it isn't a coincidence we only got into Iron Maiden around the early 2000s.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair.
Things started to improve quite drastically.
Yeah.
So, yes, released on the 1st of October 1990. Now, usually we'd go on to chat about the artwork, but we've whittled away for quite some time.
Quite a while.
Yeah. It's amazing there's so much to say about such a, in many ways, unremarkable album.
I mean, there's been a lot of tangents, but that's fine.
That's par for the course, isn't it? So, yeah, next episode we'll get into the artwork and the tracks.
I can barely contain my excitement.
And all the regular features our listeners know and love.
Exactly. Well, we'll catch you next time then.
Indeed. So the Twitter, or the X, should we say?
Yeah, I guess we should now.
Follow us on X.
God, sounds like a Ray Bradbury novel.
But yeah, at Maiden Pod. So every time I say X, I just sound so weird. On X, formerly Twitter.
The artist formerly known as Twitter.
But it's a lovely time over there. Send us... What we don't have are contemporary reviews of No Prayer for the Dying. And I believe it's usually the good people at Can I Play With Podcast.
Can I Pod With Madness?
That's right. Can I Play With Podcast was my early rubbish names for our...
Yeah, I vetoed that quite quickly.
They much more sensibly realised that Can I Pod With Madness works
much
better. Yeah, so follow them as well because they're nice and they usually give us lots of good cuttings and things and yeah.
See what crops up on the X channel. God, that sounds ridiculous.
And we're going to plug the, how do you say it, Coffee or Kofi?
Kofi?
Kofi. But basically, you can give us money. Yay!
We will not put it to responsible use. It will fund the beer that fuels these shows.
Because we've just been inundated of messages, haven't we, Sam? Guys, we want to give you loads of money, but we don't know how.
If I could, add a tumbleweed sound effect, I would.
Well, now you can. There's a link for the Kofi somewhere, probably on the X.
Somewhere.
Jesus Christ, I have to get over this mental block I have by saying X.
Yeah, I now feel dirty that we've asked for money. So let's end this episode.
Okay, on that charming note, bye.
Bye.